Count Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy. Note 1 Tolstoy, TL2 Russian, Note 2 IPA, Lev Nikolajevich TL Stoj. Listen 9th of September OS August 28, 1828 20th of November OS November 7, 1910, usually referred to in English as Leo Tolstoy, was a Russian writer who is regarded as one of the greatest authors of all time. 3. He received nominations for the Nobel Prize in Literature every year from 1902 to 1906 and for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1901, 1902, and 1909. The fact that he never won is a major controversy. 4. 5. 6. 7. Born to an aristocratic Russian family in 1828. 3. Tolstoy's notable works include the novels War and Peace 1869 and Anna Karenina 1878, often cited as pinnacles of realist fiction. 3. He first achieved literary acclaim in his 20s with his semi-autobiographical trilogy, Childhood, Boyhood, and Youth 1852, 1856, and Sevastopol Sketches 1855, based upon his experiences in the Crimean War. His fiction includes dozens of short stories and several novellas such as The Death of Ivan Ilyich 1886, Family Happiness 1859, After the Ball 1911, and Haji Murad 1912. He also wrote plays and numerous philosophical essays. In the 1870s, Tolstoy experienced a profound moral crisis, followed by what he regarded as an equally profound spiritual awakening, as outlined in his non-fiction work A Confession 1882. His literal interpretation of the ethical teachings of Jesus, centering on the Sermon on the Mount, caused him to become a fervent Christian anarchist and pacifist. 3. His ideas on non-violent resistance, expressed in such works as The Kingdom of God is Within You 1894, had a profound impact on such pivotal 20th century figures as Mahatma Gandhi 9 and Martin Luther King Jr. 10. He also became a dedicated advocate of Georgism, the economic philosophy of Henry George, which he incorporated into his writing, particularly Resurrection 1899. The Tolstoys were a well-known family of old Russian nobility who traced their ancestry to a mythical nobleman named Andres, described by Fyodor Tolstoy as arriving from Nemec, from the lands of Caesar Tikhonov in 1353 along with his two sons Litvinos or Livones and Zmontin or Zygmunt and a druzhina of 3,000 people. 1112 While the word Nemec has been long used to describe Germans only, at that time it was applied to any foreigner who didn't speak Russian, from the word nemoy meaning mute. 13 Andres was then converted to Eastern Orthodoxy, under the name of Leonti, and his sons as Konstantin and Fyodor. Konstantin's grandson Andrei Karatonovich was nicknamed Tolstoy, translated as Fat, by Vasily II of Moscow after he moved from Chernigov to Moscow. 1112 Because of the pagan names and the fact that Chernigov at the time was ruled by Demetrius I Starshi, some researchers concluded that they were Lithuanians who arrived from the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. 1114-15 At the same time, no mention of Andres was ever found in the 14th to 16th century documents, while the Chernigov chronicles used by Fyodor Tolstoy as a reference were lost. 11 The first documented members of the Tolstoy family also lived during the 17th century, thus Fyodor Tolstoy himself is generally considered the founder of the noble house, being granted the title of Count by Peter the Great. 1617 Tolstoy was born at Yasnaya Polyana, a family estate 12 kilometers 7.5 miles southwest of Tula, and 200 kilometers 120 miles south of Moscow. He was the fourth of 5 children of Count Nikolai Ilyich Tolstoy 1794-1837, a veteran of the Patriotic War of 1812, and Princess Maria Tolstoyeva-Voganskaya 1790-1830. His mother died when he was 2 and his father when he was 9. 18 Tolstoy and his siblings were brought up by relatives. 3 In 1844, he began studying law and Oriental languages at Kazan University, where teachers described him as both unable and unwilling to learn. 18 Tolstoy left the university in the middle of his studies, 18 returned to Yasnaya Polyana and then spent much time in Moscow, Tula, and St. Petersburg, leading a lax and leisurely lifestyle. 3 He began writing during this period, 18 including his first novel Childhood, a fictitious account of his own youth, which was published in 1852. 3 In 1851, after running up heavy gambling debts, he went with his older brother to the Caucasus and joined the army. Tolstoy served as a young artillery officer during the Crimean War and was in Sevastopol during the 11-month-long siege of Sevastopol in 1854–55, 19 including the Battle of the Chernaya. During the war he was recognized for his courage and promoted to lieutenant. 19 He was appalled by the number of deaths involved in warfare, 18 and left the army after the end of the Crimean War. 3 His experience in the army, and 2 trips around Europe in 1857 and 1860–61 converted Tolstoy from a dissolute and privileged society author to a non-violent and spiritual anarchist. Others who followed the same path were Alexander Herzen, Mikhail Bakunin, and Peter Kropotkin. During his 1857 visit, Tolstoy witnessed a public execution in Paris, a traumatic experience that marked the rest of his life. In a letter to his friend Vasily Botkin, Tolstoy wrote, "The truth is that the state is a conspiracy designed not only to exploit, but above all to corrupt its citizens. Henceforth, I shall never serve any government anywhere." 20 Tolstoy's concept of non-violence or ahimsa was bolstered when he read a German version of the Tirakural. 21–22 He later instilled the concept in Mahatma Gandhi through his A letter to a Hindu when young Gandhi corresponded with him seeking his advice. 22–23–24 His European trip in 1860–61 shaped both his political and literary development when he met Victor Hugo. Tolstoy read Hugo's newly finished Les Miserables. The similar evocation of battle scenes in Hugo's novel and Tolstoy's War and Peace indicates this influence. Tolstoy's political philosophy was also influenced by a March 1861 visit to French anarchist Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, then living in exile under an assumed name in Brussels. Tolstoy reviewed Proudhon's forthcoming publication, La Guerre et la Paix War and Peace in French, and later used the title for his masterpiece. The two men also discussed education, as Tolstoy wrote in his educational notebooks, "If I recount this conversation with Proudhon, it is to show that, in my personal experience, he was the only man who understood the significance of education and of the printing press in our time." Fired by enthusiasm, Tolstoy returned to Yasnaya Polyana and founded 13 schools for the children of Russia's peasants, who had just been emancipated from serfdom in 1861. Tolstoy described the school's principles in his 1862 essay The School at Yasnaya Polyana. 25 His educational experiments were short-lived, partly due to harassment by the Tsarist secret police. However, as a direct forerunner to A.S. Neil's Summerhill School, the school at Yasnaya Polyana 26 can justifiably be claimed the first example of a coherent theory of democratic education.